We're just stretching, don't be insecure, my girlfriend said, while her ex rubbed oil on her shoulders. He tried a YouTube jujitsu move on me. I dropped him with one hit. Then I took a $130,000 job offer abroad. By the weekend, their meltdown was live-streamed everywhere. Hey Reddit, my girlfriend thought yoga with her ex was spiritual healing. I thought it was BS. Turns out I was right, and things got a lot messier than essential oils and bad advice. But let's start from the beginning. I'm Jordan Cross, 29, reservoir engineer. The job's simple. Turn underground rock into paychecks for people who wouldn't know a drill bit from a screwdriver. It pays $78,000 a year, which is enough to keep me comfortable and my girlfriend asking about raises. My old man ran a bare-bones boxing gym in Galveston before he died. Concrete floors, peeling paint, equipment older than me. His only rule, never throw the first punch, but when you do throw one, make it count. I spent my teenage years getting my face rearranged by guys twice my size until I learned to hit back smarter. Dad would say precision beats power every single time. He was right about that. Right about a lot of things. Cross, you planning to marry that gauge, or can we move on? My supervisor, Howard, yelled over the machinery noise. Just making sure it doesn't explode, I said. Figured that's worth 30 extra seconds. He grunted something that might have been approval and walked off. The crew laughed. I liked them. Hardworking, no drama, showed up on time. My phone buzzed in my coveralls. Zoe, 3 texts in a row. Morning, babe. You remembered lunch with my mom today, right? Don't make me use the word priorities, okay? I texted back. Still employed. Still breathing. See you at lunch if this thing doesn't kill me first. She sent a heart emoji and a photo of her latte with foam art. I pocketed the phone and went back to work. By noon, we were in the office trailer trying not to melt. Howard walked in carrying a folder like it contained nuclear codes. Cross, you still ignoring my emails about the Stavanger position? Not ignoring, I said. Just hoping they'll disappear if I don't look directly at them. He dropped the folder on the desk. 92,000 base. Full housing package. Relocation covered. Project lead for the North Sea operations. I need someone out there in 3 weeks. Sounds cold. It's Norway. Everything's cold except the paycheck. I've got things here. Things like a girlfriend who spends your money on yoga memberships. I looked up. How do you know about that? You talk in your sleep during site inspections. Also, your credit card statement was on the printer last week. He tapped the folder. Think about it. After work, I drove home through Houston traffic that smelled like burning rubber and regret. Zoe's white sedan sat in the driveway already. I'd missed lunch. An alarm at the rig ate the whole afternoon. Her mom would definitely bring it up at Thanksgiving. Inside, the apartment smelled like lavender candles and expensive air freshener. Zoe came out of the bedroom wearing yoga pants and a sports bra, hair tied up, looking like she'd just finished a photo shoot. You survived, she said, smiling like I'd returned from combat. Barely. How was lunch with your mom? She asked where you were. I told her work comes first for you. The way she said it made it sound like an accusation. I let it slide. Howard brought up the Norway thing again, I said. Her face lit up. Please tell me you're not actually considering it. It's almost a $20,000 raise, Zoe. But I'm here. My friends are here. My family's here. You'd really leave all that for some frozen wasteland? Your friends. Your family. I noticed she didn't say us or we. Just her stuff, anchored in place, and me expected to orbit around it. It's just an offer, I said. She relaxed immediately. Good, because I have something way cooler to show you. She grabbed her phone and pulled up a video. Some shirtless guy with a man bun doing an impossible yoga pose. The caption read, Kyle Morrison, find your flow. Recognize him? She asked. I did. Kyle, her ex-boyfriend. Last I heard, he'd moved to Bali to discover his truth, or some other nonsense that meant running from responsibility. He's teaching in Houston again, Zoe said, eyes bright. Isn't that amazing? He opened a studio in Montrose. I stared at the video. The guy who cheated on you is now teaching people about inner peace. That's rich. Don't be bitter. People change. Sure they do. Usually into worse versions of themselves. She sighed and scrolled through more photos. Lots of Kyle doing poses, Kyle smiling at the camera, Kyle looking like he'd found enlightenment in a protein shake. You should come to one of his classes, Zoe said. Might help with your stress. I handle stress fine. It's the people around me that make it worse. She laughed and kissed me on the cheek, then went back to scrolling. I noticed she'd already liked 3 of his posts, with heart emojis. That night, I sat at my desk sorting through invoices while Zoe giggled at her phone. The blue glow lit up her face in the dark bedroom. I lay there watching the ceiling fan spin and thinking about Howard's offer. 92,000, cold air, distance. Zoe turned toward me, half asleep. Don't stay up too late. You've got work tomorrow. Yeah, I said quietly. My phone buzzed again. Howard's email subject line. Last call before we give this to someone else. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just stared at it, thumb hovering, thinking about my dad's old gym, about hitting the bag until your knuckles bled and your head cleared, about knowing when to block and when to counterpunch. Precision beats power. Maybe it was almost time to throw. Zoe's yoga habit started small. One Saturday class, then Saturdays and occasional Sundays. By the third week, she was at Kyle's studio 4 times a week. Every time I asked how it went, she'd smile and say, "Transformative." I had no idea what that meant, but apparently transformation required full makeup and perfume for a workout class. 2 weeks in, I decided to see what the fuss was about. When I told her I'd join, her smile froze. "Oh, yeah, anyone can come. It's open." She said it like I'd just invited myself to her therapy session. The studio was one of those minimalist places with exposed brick and plants everywhere. It smelled like eucalyptus and $20 candles. Kyle stood at the front in loose linen pants, looking like he'd just finished meditating on a mountaintop. "Welcome, friends," he said, in that slow, deliberate voice people use when they want to sound wise. "Today we explore the balance between strength and surrender." I grabbed a mat in the back corner. Zoe waved at Kyle like they were old friends. He smiled back with teeth so white I needed sunglasses. Class started. Everyone stretched. 1. Kyle floated between rows, adjusting postures, occasionally touching someone's shoulder or back. When he reached Zoe, he stopped. "Beautiful form," he said softly. "You've been practicing." "Trying," she whispered back. I raised an eyebrow. She didn't look my way. After an hour of forced calm, Kyle ended class with some namaste nonsense. People clapped. I grabbed my water bottle and headed for the door. Kyle intercepted me near the exit. "Jordan, right? Zoe mentioned you." "That's me. Glad you joined us. Balance is everything. You seemed a little stiff today." "I work on an oil rig. Stiff is the default setting." He smiled that smile again. "Maybe yoga could help with that tension. Maybe. Or maybe I just need fewer people in my personal space." His smile flickered. Zoe appeared quickly. "Jordan's just tired from work. Long week, I'm sure," Kyle said, backing off. We left. Zoe didn't talk much on the drive home. The next Saturday, she went back. And the Saturday after. And then Wednesdays, too. Her phone started lighting up at night with studio updates and class reminders. Every notification made her smile. One Friday, she told me she'd be helping Kyle with some studio setup over the weekend. "Setup?" I asked. "Like what?" "Rearranging mats, cleaning mirrors, organizing supplies. No big deal." "Does he pay you for this volunteer enlightenment?" "God, you're exhausting. He's just a friend who needs help." "Right. Friends." Saturday came. She left early smelling like coconut and confidence. I spent the day finishing reports and ignoring Howard's increasingly aggressive emails about Norway. By 6, the house was quiet. I figured she'd roll in late like usual, but my evening meeting got canceled. For once, I'd be home early. I grabbed Thai food on the way back, thinking maybe we'd actually eat dinner together. When I pulled up, the apartment lights were on, but the door was cracked open. That wasn't normal. Inside, music played. Soft, atmospheric stuff that belonged in a spa commercial. Incense burned on the counter. The air smelled like sandalwood and sweat. I followed the sound to the living room. Zoe stood there in a sports bra and leggings, hair up in a messy bun. Kyle knelt behind her, hands slick with oil, rubbing her shoulders. His voice was low and smooth. "Breathe deeper. Release the tension." Her eyes were closed. She hadn't seen me yet. I stood in the doorway holding takeout. The plastic bag crinkled. Kyle looked up first. His hands froze mid-rub. Zoe's eyes snapped open. "Jordan, you're home early," she said, like I'd caught her sneaking in. "Door was unlocked," I said calmly. "Didn't know we were running a spa." "It's not what it looks like," she blurted. Kyle's hands slid off her shoulders. "We were doing recovery work, partner stretching." "With oil?" I asked. "It helps with muscle release. Completely professional." "Right. You bill hourly or by the inch?" Zoe stepped forward, face flushed. "Jordan, stop. You're overreacting. Kyle's my friend. He's helping me train. Train for what? The Infidelity Olympics?" Her face went red. "You always do this. You twist everything. God forbid I have one thing in my life you're not controlling." "I don't control anything. I just don't love finding another man's hands on my girlfriend in my living room." She crossed her arms. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you. You turn everything into drama. If you can't handle me having friends who respect me, maybe you're not the man I thought you were." The sentence hung there, sharp and deliberate. Kyle shifted his weight but didn't leave. He just stood there, awkward but defiant, like enlightenment gave him diplomatic immunity. I set the food down on the counter. "Looks like dinner's canceled." Zoe threw her hands up. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe you're not the man I need. Someone more secure wouldn't be threatened by this. I looked at her for a long moment. Maybe I'm not. The room went silent. Kyle exhaled through his nose like he'd just finished meditating. Nobody moved. And that's where it sat, right on the edge, waiting to tip. The sandalwood smell stuck to everything. Oil bottles sat on the counter like evidence at a crime scene. Kyle stood near the couch trying to look zen, while clearly calculating his exit strategy. Zoe's voice cracked through the silence. You're being paranoid. Just because I spend time with Kyle doesn't mean anything's happening. Her tone climbed with each word, defensive and sharp. If you can't handle me having male friends, especially someone who actually listens to me, maybe you should date someone less independent. I leaned against the doorframe. Independent would mean paying for your own yoga membership. Her eyes flared. You don't own me, Jordan. I can have whoever I want in my life. If you don't trust me, maybe you're not secure enough for someone like me. Kyle straightened up, trying to look authoritative. Hey, man, no need to talk to her like that. She's defending you, I said. You sure you want that job? He stepped closer, chest puffed. Zoe hovered behind him like she'd already chosen sides. You need to chill, bro, Kyle said. You're acting out of ego. Funny. You're standing in my apartment covered in oil, and I'm the one with the ego problem. His jaw clenched. You don't intimidate me. Good. Wouldn't be fair if I did. That's when he decided to prove something. He lunged, some sloppy grappling move he probably learned from a YouTube tutorial, reaching for my collar. I sidestepped, pivoted on instinct, and threw one clean punch. Years of my dad's training in a single motion. Kyle's head snapped back. His body hit the wall hard enough to knock a picture frame off. Glass shattered on the floor. Zoe gasped. Jordan, what the hell is wrong with you? Self-defense, I said flatly. He wasn't invited. By me, anyway. She ran to Kyle, who was groaning and holding his jaw. You're insane. You could have seriously hurt him. If I wanted to hurt him, I would have hit harder. She spun around, pointing at me. You're abusive. This is who you really are. Some violent psycho who can't handle being wrong. I stared at her. You brought another man into my apartment for an oil massage, and I'm the psycho? Kyle was helping me. Kyle tried to stand, wobbling. You're gonna regret that, man. I sincerely doubt it. Zoe's voice turned venomous. You think this makes you tough? You think I need you? Kyle actually makes me feel valued, which is more than you've ever done. Right. Nothing says valued like aromatherapy and back rubs. God, you're such a child, she screamed. I pointed to the door. Take him and the oil. Both of you, out. She blinked, shocked. You're serious? Completely. For a moment, neither moved. Then Zoe hissed, You'll regret this, grabbed Kyle's arm, and dragged him toward the door. He left an oily handprint on the wall as they left. The door slammed. Silence flooded back in. I walked to the kitchen and poured water. 2 glasses sat on the counter, one with lipstick marks on the rim. My laptop still sat open from earlier. Howard's Norway email stared at me from the inbox. Subject, final offer, Stavanger project lead. Base, 92,000. Housing included. Relocation covered. Need answer by Friday. I read it twice, then scrolled down and clicked accept. Howard's reply came within 3 minutes. Knew you'd come around. Welcome aboard, Cross. I closed the laptop and started clearing the apartment. Candles, towels, incense. Everything went into trash bags. The framed beach photo of us went in last. When I finished, I sat in the empty living room and looked around. For the first time in months, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. By Monday, my phone was a battlefield. 14 missed calls, twice as many texts. Zoe cycling through every emotion like she was training for emotional gymnastics. You didn't have to hit him. You ruined everything. Can we please just talk? You're a heartless jerk. I spent the day packing her stuff methodically. Clothes folded, toiletries boxed, everything labeled, professional, efficient, like closing a failed project. Work became my anchor again. 2 days later, Morgan stopped by my desk. She was one of our project coordinators. Sharp, observant, didn't waste words. Heard you finally took the Norway offer, she said. Yeah, figured I'd trade heat for something colder. She smiled. Smart move. You deserve better air. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Listen, I didn't want to say anything before, but I saw Zoe with that yoga guy months ago. At the wellness retreat in Austin back in March. They were holding hands between sessions. I looked up. Kyle. Yeah, I didn't think it was my place to mention it then, but figured you should know now. Appreciate it. I still have photos from the event if you need them. I might, she nodded. You're handling this better than most people would. Anger wastes energy. I learned that early. That night, I needed to burn something off. I went back to my old boxing gym. The place smelled like leather and disinfectant. Familiar. Grounding. Look who remembered where we keep the gloves, Brandon called out, tossing me a pair. Therapy's expensive. This is cheaper and more honest. You hit like you're erasing bad memories. Working on it. I hit the heavy bag until my shoulders burned and my head cleared. First time in weeks I felt centered. 3 nights later, everything went sideways. Brandon and I grabbed drinks after training. As we pulled into my building's parking lot, I spotted Zoe standing near my door, phone in hand. Thought we were done with this part, Brandon muttered. Stay in the car. Not a chance. This is entertainment. I walked up slowly. Zoe's face lit up with rehearsed innocence. Jordan, can we talk? 5 minutes. No drama. Her voice was too sweet. That specific tone that hides teeth. 5 minutes, I said. She gestured toward the hallway like she wanted privacy. The lights flickered overhead. My instincts kicked in. That's when I caught the shadows. 2 shapes lurking near the corner. Both big, both wearing gym clothes. Behind them, Kyle. Really? I said quietly. What? Zoe asked. You brought an audience. Before she could answer, one of the guys lunged from behind the corner, arm hooking around my neck. Bad decision. I twisted, broke the grip, drove an elbow into his ribs, heard the air leave his lungs. The second guy charged. I sidestepped and let momentum carry him into the wall. Should have stayed home, Jordan, Kyle yelled, swinging wild. I ducked, countered, landed a clean shot to his jaw. He crumpled against the floor, groaning. Brandon's laughter echoed down the hall. Man, I told you therapy was cheaper. Zoe stood frozen. Stop! You're crazy! Self-defense. Again, you brought the backup dancers. Brandon held up his phone, camera rolling. And I got the whole thing. Say cheese, Enlightenment Squad. The security camera above us blinked red. Perfect. Kyle tried standing but couldn't manage it. You're gonna pay for this. Doubt it. Zoe backed away, face pale. You'll regret this. Maybe, but not tonight. They scattered. Kyle half-limped toward the stairs like a wounded guru. Brandon lowered his phone. You know, I don't even need that drink anymore. Good. We've got work to do. Back inside, I pulled up my laptop. The adrenaline faded, replaced by cold focus. I logged into the building portal and requested security footage. Camera 3A, timestamp 2107 to 2125. The manager clipped it and sent a watermarked file within 10 minutes. Then I texted Morgan, you still have those retreat photos? Already sent them. Minutes later, a folder appeared in my inbox. Pictures, timestamps, receipts, Kyle and Zoe at the pool, his hand on her waist. Caption, partner work. I compiled everything. Security footage, retreat photos, text threads, Kyle's public posts. Then I found Claire Morrison on social media, Kyle's wife. Her profile showed her with their dog at some park. I kept it simple. Hi, Claire. I don't know you, but you should know the truth. Your husband's been involved with my ex-girlfriend Zoe. Photos and timeline attached. You can verify everything with his location tags. Not looking for drama, just closure. Jordan Cross attached the file. Hit send. Close the laptop. Brandon glanced over. That what I think it is? Evidence. Clean. Professional. Devastating. He grinned. Remind me never to cross you. You already owe me for Thai food. We both laughed. The tension finally breaking. Outside, rain started tapping against the windows. For the first time in weeks, it sounded like rhythm instead of noise. By morning, the fuse had already burned down. I woke up to 23 notifications and a text from Brandon. Dude, you broke the internet. Someone had filmed Claire storming into Kyle's yoga studio mid-class. She walked in calm but lethal, while Kyle stood there trying to sound enlightened. You said she was a client, Kyle. Then what's this? She held up her phone, reading his texts out loud. Can't wait to feel your energy tonight. The room went dead silent. Someone's phone went up. Then another. Within an hour, the video was everywhere. Caption, Namaste, cheater. By noon, the internet did what it does best. Memes flooded every platform. Kyle in yoga poses with captions. Find your center. Just not with someone else's girlfriend. Downward dogged. New class. Betrayal flow. Tuesdays at 6. Brandon called, wheezing with laughter. Bro, someone edited his face onto a scented candle ad. You're a legend. I just provided information. The internet did the rest. Zoe made her move that afternoon. Her post went up. Jordan left me for money. Some people chase paychecks, others value love. Guess which one he chose? The comment section destroyed her. Didn't you choose yoga oil over loyalty? Girl, the only thing you lost was your self-respect. Maybe if you valued love, you wouldn't have been stretching with your ex. I scrolled through silently, sipping coffee. Technically, I left for peace and a pension, I muttered. But things got messier before they got better. 2 days later, there was a knock. I opened the door to find Zoe's mother, sister, and aunt standing there like a disappointed tribunal. Her mom, Patricia, started, "Jordan, dear, we need to talk. Zoe says you've been unstable, violent." "Unstable?" I repeated. Her sister folded her arms. "You attacked her yoga instructor. She says you're spiraling." I nodded slowly. "Come in. Let me show you something." I pulled up Brandon's recording on my TV. The hallway ambush, Kyle's friends, the chokehold attempt, the quick counters. Then, the building's security footage, matching timestamps perfectly. They watched in complete silence. When it ended, I muted the screen. "That's your future son-in-law trying to play action hero in my hallway. I was the final boss he couldn't beat." Her mom blinked. Her sister looked away. We didn't know." "Now you do," I said, opening the door. "Tell Zoe I'm fine. Just done." They left without another word. But the fallout wasn't finished. Kyle's business collapsed within days. The studio owner terminated his lease, something about a morals clause and disturbances. Reviews turned savage. Sponsors vanished overnight. His last Instagram post, a sunset photo captioned, "Even in chaos, we breathe." Top comment, "Try breathing through divorce papers," because Claire filed that same morning. She didn't tag him. Everyone knew anyway. My phone rang. Kyle's name on the screen. I answered. "Jordan speaking. Man, you've got to help me." His voice cracked, desperate. "She's destroying everything. You started this. Fix it. You broke it when you put your hands on someone else's girlfriend." I just replied to the group chat. "You don't understand?" "I understand perfectly. You gambled with trust and lost. That's called consequences." I hung up. By the weekend, the noise finally started to fade. Kyle disappeared offline. Zoe went silent. The studio shut down. I packed my last suitcase. The company had already sent flight details for Stavanger. Brandon pulled up to drive me to the airport. So that's it? Leaving the land of drama and essential oils? Time to trade chaos for cold air. "You sure about this?" "Completely. Norway's freezing, but at least it's honest." We drove in silence for a while before he spoke again. "For what it's worth, you handled this like a surgeon." "I just followed the data, found the leak, sealed it, moved on." He laughed. "That's one way to describe punching a yoga instructor into next week. At least my form was good." At the airport, he helped with my bags. "You coming back?" I watched planes cutting through the sky. "Not unless Texas learns loyalty." "Fair. Send postcards, not X's. Deal." I shook his hand and headed inside. As the doors closed behind me, my phone buzzed one last time. A meme of Kyle meditating, captioned, "Inner peace, file not found." I smiled despite myself. Karma didn't need my help anymore. It was doing fine on its own. Airports smell like goodbye mixed with jet fuel. I stood near gate 14, waiting for the final boarding call to Oslo. Suitcase beside me. Everything I owned condensed into 2 bags and a carry-on. Then I heard it. "Jordan!" Her voice cut through the crowd like a knife. I turned. Zoe ran toward me, hair messy, eyes red, panic written all over her face. She stopped a few feet away, breathing hard. "You're really leaving? Just like that?" "I was. You caught me between flights and closure." She blinked fast, trying to hold it together. "I overheard someone at a cafe talking about you. His cousin works here. I didn't even finish my coffee. I just drove straight here. Word travels fast. Please don't go. We can fix this." I was stupid, okay? I said things I didn't mean. We can start fresh, get married, move somewhere new together. I'll change. I studied her. Mascara streaks, shaking hands, desperation bleeding through every word. Once, that would have cracked me wide open. Not anymore. "You want a redo," I said. "I want peace. Can't have both." Her eyes filled instantly. "You don't mean that. You still love me." "Love's not the issue. Respect is. You ran out of that before I ran for this gate." She grabbed my sleeve. "Please, Jordan, I can't lose you." I didn't pull away immediately. I just looked at her. This person I'd built a life around, now barely recognizing herself. "You already did," I said. "You just noticed late." Her lip trembled. "You're being cruel." "No, I'm being honest. You should try it." That landed hard. She stepped back, tears streaming. "So that's it? You get to walk away and I just deal with it?" "Exactly. That's called consequences." People were staring now. Security hovered nearby. One officer stepped closer, voice low. "Everything okay here?" "Fine," I said. "Just saying goodbye." He nodded and stepped back but kept watching. Zoe's voice cracked. "Then say it. Tell me it's over so I can hate you properly." I took a breath. "It's over." The words hit her like a physical blow. She went completely still. "You'll thank me one day," I said quietly, "for being the first person who didn't let you lie to yourself." "Jordan, don't." But I already had. I turned and walked towards security. Jordan, please, she called out, voice breaking. You can't just leave me like this. I didn't look back. I'd spent 3 years turning around every time she said please. I handed my boarding pass to the agent, cleared security, and stepped through to the other side. The crowd swallowed her cries, turning them into background noise. On the plane, I found my window seat. The city lights below looked small, harmless, memories that finally knew their place. I powered off my phone before it could buzz again. Silence didn't mean tension anymore. It meant peace. As the engines roared and the plane lifted off, I let out a slow breath. Somewhere behind me, Zoe was probably still crying in a terminal, realizing the only person she couldn't manipulate was gone for good. I didn't hate her, didn't even pity her. I just hoped one day she'd understand what she lost. Someone who meant every word until she made them meaningless. I leaned back and smiled faintly. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from anything. I was flying towards something better. Stavanger hit me like a reset button wrapped in snow. Air so cold it burned your lungs. Streets so quiet you could hear yourself think without hating what you heard. No yoga studios. No drama. Just work, mountains, and a kind of peace I'd forgotten existed. Mornings belonged to the harbor. Boats rocked under gray skies. Gulls circled overhead, and everything smelled like salt and diesel. By 8, I was at the office overlooking the fjord, running subsea integrity for rigs up north. Pressure models, risk assessments, steel and numbers. Everything made sense here. The gym near my flat became my second home. No mirrors for selfies, no motivational quotes on the walls, just bags, weights, and people who showed up to work, not perform. The coach asked what I was training for. I said focus. He nodded and left me alone. Norwegians didn't waste words, and I respected that. They said what they meant, then went home on time. Even their silence felt intentional. I learned fast. Take your boots off inside, don't skip lines, always bring your own coffee thermos. I could live with this kind of quiet. Morgan started texting regularly, first about work, then random observations, then late-night messages about everything and nothing. She had the kind of humor that didn't need punctuation. Smart, calm, the opposite of chaos. Brandon kept me updated from Houston. Zoe's dating a CrossFit trainer named Travis. Of course she is. He looks like Kyle with more protein and less personality. 3 months later, Travis cheated. Client named Bree. Apparently very flexible. Poetry in motion. Zoe posted about healing and boundaries. Comments are off. She's learning. Work climbed steadily. I caught a design flaw that had stalled a project for months, saving the company a fortune. Howard sent an email. Knew you'd make this place better. I bought a proper winter coat, stopped checking Houston weather, and learned to drink coffee strong enough to strip paint. Kyle's name resurfaced once. Brandon again. Claire's divorce finalized. Took half his savings. Kyle's banned from 3 gyms for unprofessional conduct. Everyone calls him book club now. Enlightenment doesn't pay rent, I guess. I laughed harder than I meant to. Not cruel laughter. Just closure finding its sense of humor. Nights were simple. I cooked fish, read, boxed until my hands ached in the right way. The city glowed under snow like it didn't care about my past. I started sleeping through the night again. That was new. Morgan's texts turned into calls. She asked about Norway. I told her about how the sun barely rose in winter, how quiet the water got when it froze. She said it sounded lonely. I said it sounded like peace. By spring, she was sending flight searches. Tickets aren't bad. Come see what silence looks like. Tempting. Sell it better. Snow, seafood, and a guy who stopped making bad decisions. Finally, I'll pack warm. When she landed that June, the city looked brighter. She stepped out of arrivals in a wool coat and a grin that thawed whatever ice was left. I took her straight to the harbor for coffee and pastries. She said the place felt too clean to ruin. I said that was the point. Days blurred into something good. Work, hikes, shared meals. She fit the rhythm here easily. No pretending, no tests, no ghosts, just 2 people who didn't need to perform. But then, 3 months after Morgan arrived, my phone rang. Unknown number. Houston area code. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello? Jordan? The voice was familiar but wrong. Strained, desperate. It's Zoe. I paused. How'd you get this number? I called your old office. Begged. Please don't hang up. Morgan looked at me from across the kitchen, eyebrow raised. I put the phone on speaker. What do you want, Zoe? I'm in Norway. I froze. What? Stavanger. I'm here. I flew in this morning. I need to see you. Please, just one conversation. Face to face. Morgan's expression hardened. I felt my jaw clench. How do you even know where I live? I don't. I'm at a cafe downtown. Someplace called Bokerug Burst. I'll wait here. Please, Jordan. I came all this way. I looked at Morgan. She shook her head slowly. 1 hour, I said. That's it. Thank you, Zoe whispered. I hung up. Morgan crossed her arms. You're not seriously going. I need to close this door properly. One last time. Want me to come? No, I've got this. The cafe sat on a cobblestone street near the harbor. Through the window, I saw Zoe sitting alone, coffee untouched, staring at her phone. She looked thinner, tired, like she'd been running for months and finally hit a wall. I walked in. She looked up, eyes red. You came, she said, standing. You flew 4,000 miles. Least I can do is show up. We sat. Silence hung between us like smoke. You look good, she said quietly. I feel good. What are you doing here, Zoe? She took a shaky breath. I made a mistake. I know that now. He was a disaster. Travis was worse. Everything fell apart after you left. My friends stopped calling. My family barely talks to me. I lost my job because I couldn't focus. Her voice cracked. I need you to know I'm sorry. For everything. I leaned back. I appreciate that. But you didn't fly here for closure. What do you really want? Her eyes filled. I want us back. I want to fix this. We were good together, Jordan. We can be again. I stared at her for a long moment. No, she blinked. What? No, we're not doing this. You don't get to blow up my life, watch it burn, then show up months later asking for matches. I changed, Jordan. I'm different now. Maybe. But I'm different too. I don't carry people who don't carry themselves. Tears streamed down her face. So that's it? You just moved on? Like I never mattered? You mattered. Past tense. And I did move on. Met someone who doesn't need oil and excuses, to be honest. Her face twisted. You're with someone? Yeah. Someone who respects me enough not to need this conversation. She stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. I flew across the world for you. And I left across the world to get away from you. We're even. People were staring now. Zoe's voice rose. You're heartless. You know that? You're a cold, selfish... I'm done, I said calmly, standing. You came for closure. Here it is. We're finished. We're finished the moment you chose oil massages over honesty. Fly home, Zoe. Build a life without me in it. She grabbed my arm. Please don't do this. I have nothing left. I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. That's not my problem anymore. I pulled free and walked toward the door. Jordan, she screamed. You'll regret this. You'll come back begging one day. I stopped at the door, turned back one last time. No, I said quietly. I really won't. I walked out into the cold. The air bit through my jacket, sharp and clean. Morgan was waiting across the street, leaning against a lamppost. She straightened when she saw me. Done? She asked. Completely. We walked back through the snow-covered streets in silence. Above us, the first hints of northern lights began to flicker, green and violet threads weaving through the dark. Morgan slid her hand into mine. You okay? Yeah, I said. Better than I've been in a long time. Back at the apartment, we made tea and sat by the window watching the lights dance across the sky. Morgan leaned against my shoulder, warm and steady. Outside, the city hummed quietly. Somewhere out there, Zoe was probably booking a flight home, finally realizing I wasn't coming back. I thought about Houston, about the hallway fight, the viral meltdown, the airport scene, about how revenge wasn't something I planned. It just followed logic. Cause, effect, lesson learned. I wasn't angry anymore. Wasn't even proud. Just done. Morgan stirred beside me. What are you thinking about? That some people spend their whole lives chasing heat. I'm good with the cold. She smiled. Cold's underrated. Exactly. We sat there as the auroras faded and the snow kept falling. Steady, quiet, honest. I'd left Texas for peace and found it 4,000 miles away in the last place I expected. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Guess that's why Norway felt like home. 2 years later, I'm still in Stavanger. Morgan and I got married last spring. Small ceremony, just us and the fjord. She runs logistics for the same company. We bought a cabin up north. Brandon sends updates sometimes. Kyle's selling insurance in Tulsa now. Zoe got engaged to a dental hygienist named Craig. I didn't feel anything when I heard. That's how I knew I'd actually moved on. I make $112,000 now, lead a team of 6, and haven't thought about Houston in months. When I do, it feels like watching someone else's life through a window. Distant, handled, done. Morgan's making coffee. Snow's falling outside. In an hour, we'll disappear into the woods for the day. No yoga, no oil, no baggage. My old man used to say the best revenge is living well while your enemies live with themselves. Turns out he was right about that too. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. My boss put his inexperienced son in charge of a hospital build, and tried to make me rubber stamp the shortcuts. So I walked away, and the safety test lit up their paperwork. All right, Reddit. So my boss tried to get me to sign off on safety systems that weren't tested because his son needed to look good on a hospital project. I said no, quit, and watched the whole thing blow up in their faces. I need to give you some context first. I'm Gabriel, 51M. I've done fire protection/life safety commissioning for 19 years. I'm the guy who makes sure the sprinklers, alarms, and smoke control actually work when it matters. Hospitals, data centers, high-rises, buildings where screwing up means people die. I take it seriously because I've seen what happens when people don't. Early in my career, I watched 3 guys go down from smoke inhalation during a test because somebody had propped open a fire door and disconnected the maglock. One of them was 22, first week on the job, spent 3 weeks in the hospital with lung damage he'll carry forever. I visited him twice. The second time, his mother asked me why her son couldn't breathe right anymore. Didn't have an answer for her. I'm also not easy to work with. I've got a short fuse when people try to cut corners on life safety for schedule reasons. A few years back, I got into it with a PM who wanted to skip fire pump testing and submit falsified data. Called him something HR made me apologize for in writing. That incident's been sitting in my personnel file ever since, ready to be pulled out whenever someone needs to paint me as the problem. Anyway, here's what happened. The Meridian Medical Tower was supposed to be Denver's flagship healthcare expansion. 14 stories of acute care, surgical suites, ICU floors, and a level 2 trauma center that would serve the entire northern metro area. $240 million of systems that had to work perfectly because the people inside would be vulnerable in ways office workers aren't. Patients on ventilators, surgery patients under anesthesia, newborns in the NICU, people who couldn't evacuate themselves if something went wrong. I was standing in the fire pump room on a Tuesday morning, March 11th, watching my best test tech, Rudy Espinoza, run preliminary checks on the electric fire pump controller when Stan Harlan walked in with his son trailing behind him like a shadow in an expensive hard hat. Stan was the senior project executive for Ridgeline on this job. 58 years old, silver hair, the kind of guy who learned construction management from spreadsheets rather than job sites. He'd been promising the hospital owner an August 15th substantial completion for 6 months, even though everyone with actual field experience knew we were tracking toward late September at best. The man was schedule-obsessed in a way that made my teeth hurt. His son Scooter, yeah, that's his name, was 27 with an MBA and about 14 months of actual construction experience. He'd been on the project 3 months, developing a reputation for value engineering ideas that sounded brilliant in meetings and fell apart completely in the field, and for taking credit for solutions other people developed while he was busy making phone calls. Stan stopped next to the fire pump controller. "Gabriel," he said, "we're making organizational changes. Scooter's moving into commissioning oversight. He'll coordinate all life safety testing going forward." I just glared at him. Scooter doesn't have commissioning experience. The fire marshal isn't going to accept documentation signed off by someone who doesn't understand what they're witnessing. Scooter stepped forward with that confident smile. "I've been studying the protocols, and honestly, I think we can streamline these procedures. There's a lot of redundancy in the testing schedule." Redundancy. That's what he called the verification steps that kept hospitals from burning down with patients inside. Stan cut in before I could respond. "The owner wants progress. We're behind on testing, and Scooter's going to help us catch up. You'll still be involved, but Scooter will be primary contact with the AHJ." I looked at the fire pump behind them. 500 GPM at 125 PSI, feeding 14 floors of hospital space. If this pump failed during a fire, people would die waiting for the fire department to establish water supply. "I'm not signing off on anything that isn't properly tested," I said. "And I'm not letting someone without experience represent our life safety readiness to the fire marshal." Stan's expression hardened. "Nobody's asking you to compromise, but you need to be a team player here. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I knew what team player meant in Stan's vocabulary, shutting up and going along with whatever made the schedule look better. That night, I got a call from my daughter Haley. She was 24, had just finished her nursing program, and had accepted a surgical ICU position at the new tower. The hospital had given her a signing bonus and relocation package with a clawback clause tied to the opening date. If the tower didn't open on schedule, she'd lose the position or have to pay back money she'd already spent on her apartment deposit and moving expenses. "Dad, there are rumors about delays." "What's going on?" she asked. "It's complicated. Testing issues we need to work through." "Testing issues that you're causing?" I didn't answer. The silence stretched between us through the phone. "Look," she said, "I know you take safety stuff seriously, but do your job and don't ruin mine. I need this position. I've already signed the lease." She hung up before I could explain that I wasn't causing the problems. I was trying to prevent them. The next 2 weeks felt like watching a slow-motion car crash while being handcuffed to a chair. Scooter started changing the commissioning schedule without consulting me, compressing testing windows that had been carefully planned to allow for troubleshooting if systems didn't perform correctly the first time. Witness points that required AHJ attendance got eliminated or rescheduled to times when nobody could actually be present. Documentation requirements got streamlined in ways that would make any fire marshal ask uncomfortable questions. My access to project documentation got restricted. Emails that should have copied me started going only to Scooter. Meeting invitations disappeared from my calendar. Submittals I was supposed to review went through Scooter's office instead. I'd walk into rooms and conversations would stop. People I'd worked with for years suddenly couldn't make eye contact. My brother Pete was the union foreman for Consolidated Fire Protection, the sprinkler sub, 22 years running crews across dozens of major projects, genuinely good at his work, careful, detail-oriented, the kind of foreman who caught problems during installation, rather than waiting for them to show up during testing. But his guys were getting squeezed by the same schedule pressure affecting everyone else on the project. Scooter decided Pete's crews were too slow on their rough-in installation. He convinced Stan to bring in a non-union acceleration crew from a company nobody had ever heard of for the patient floors. Pete's guys got pushed to mechanical spaces and service areas, while the new crew took over the high-visibility work that would show up in progress photos. Pete called me Thursday night. His voice was exhausted. "Gabriel, these new guys don't know what they're doing. I found 3 branch lines today with wrong orifice heads installed. Wrong K-factor for the hazard classification. Light hazard heads in ordinary hazard areas. If those zones get tested, they'll fail. And the fire marshal is going to want to know who approved the installation. Did you document it? Submitted it to Scooter 3 days ago with photographs and specification references. Nothing's changed. Same wrong heads, same code violations, same problems waiting to blow up during testing. The next morning, I walked the patient floors myself and documented it properly. Wrong heads in ordinary hazard areas. Stuff that would fail the second an inspector looked. I photographed each room number and the head model, built a quick spreadsheet with locations and code notes, and emailed Scooter the full packet with the subject line, "Patient floor sprinkler head deficiencies. Immediate correction required." He replied, "Forward to the sprinkler sub." I printed that email and filed it. At that point, I wasn't collecting notes. I was collecting receipts. I felt the familiar heat building in my chest. Go around him. Give the documentation to me directly. I'll get it into the project record. Friday morning, I walked onto the 7th floor to find Scooter standing over Rudy at the fire alarm annunciator panel. Rudy had the panel open, multimeter in hand, running point-to-point verification on the initiating device circuits. Standard procedure that I'd watched him perform on 20 different projects. You test every device, verify every circuit, document every reading. That's the code. Scooter was pointing at his tablet, showing Rudy some kind of spreadsheet. We need to accelerate this significantly. Test every third device and extrapolate the rest. Statistical sampling will get us through verification in half the time. Rudy glanced up and saw me. His face said everything. The look of a guy being told to do something he knows is wrong by someone who doesn't understand why it's wrong, but has the authority to make his life miserable. He wants me to initial stuff I didn't test, Rudy said quietly as I approached. I walked over, my boots heavy on the concrete floor. What's happening here? Scooter didn't look up from his tablet. Streamlining the verification process. We can statistical sample instead of full device testing. It's a standard efficiency practice. Statistical sample doesn't exist in NFPA 72 for device verification. Every device gets tested. Every circuit gets verified. Not without a written alternative method approved by the AHJ. And we don't have that. Scooter finally looked at me with that condescending patience. The code allows for alternative methods with AHJ approval. Have you gotten AHJ approval for statistical sampling? Silence. I stepped between Scooter and the panel. Rudy, continue full verification. Every device, every circuit, per the approved commissioning plan that we submitted to the fire marshal's office. Scooter's jaw tightened. His face went red. I'm the commissioning coordinator now. I make these calls. You can coordinate whatever you want, but Rudy works for me, and he's not signing off on partial testing that violates code. Neither am I. If you want to explain to the fire marshal why you thought statistical sampling was acceptable, be my guest. The GC superintendent, Hank Webb, had walked up behind us during the exchange. He stood there with his arms crossed, weathered face expressionless, watching the confrontation unfold. The man had 30 years in the field. He'd seen every kind of corporate disaster, every kind of shortcut that seemed smart until it wasn't. Scooter looked at Hank like he expected backup. Hank just shook his head. That's not a schedule call. That's code. Can't help you there. Scooter's face went from red to almost purple. He jabbed a finger at me, close enough that I could feel the air move. This is exactly the obstruction my father warned me about. This attitude right here. This is why this project is behind schedule. Call it what you want. The testing protocol doesn't change. Scooter stormed off toward the stairwell, tablet clutched in his hand like a weapon he didn't know how to use. Hank watched him go, then turned to look at me. That's going to come back on you, he said quietly. You know that, right? I know. After that confrontation, Stan called me into his office. His assistant said immediately, which in corporate speak means drop everything and get your butt in here. He closed the door behind me, and when he turned around, the professional mask was completely gone. What I saw underneath was something colder. Let me be clear about something, Gabriel. His voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous. I don't need you to be right. I need you to sign. Your integrity doesn't pay liquidated damages. Either get on board or get out of my way. If this job slides, you'll be the reason on paper. That was the moment I knew there was no middle ground, no compromise, no way to protect myself from inside this organization, while also protecting the people who would eventually occupy this building. The following week, Pete called me again. This time, his voice was different, tighter, angrier. Gabriel, I got copied on an internal memo today. Scooter's blaming the sprinkler head deficiencies on my crews. Says we installed wrong equipment, deviated from approved specs. The memo's already been distributed to the whole project team. That's garbage. The wrong heads came from his acceleration crew. Your guys weren't even on those floors. I know that. You know that. But the memo's already out there. One of my apprentices called me today, asking if he's going to get fired. Kid's 23 years old, got a baby on the way, and he's terrified he's going to lose his job over something he didn't even do. I'll document what actually happened, create a record that shows the real timeline. That's not enough. My aunt called me last night. She heard from someone at the union hall that Consolidated might get blacklisted from future hospital work in the metro area if this project goes sideways with our name attached to the problems. That's not just my job, Gabriel. That's every guy on my crew. That's their families. I sat with the phone pressed to my ear, feeling the weight of it. I can't fix this from inside, I told him. But I'm not going to let them pin it on you either. The following week, I started making phone calls, quietly, carefully, to people I'd worked with over the years who had moved on to other companies and other roles. One of those calls went to Sandra, who ran the commissioning division for an independent firm called Cornerstone Building Sciences. They specialized in owner's representative work, third-party commissioning oversight, and the kind of independent verification that building owners hired when they wanted someone whose paycheck didn't depend on the contractor's schedule performance. Sandra and I had worked together on a data center project in Aurora 5 years earlier. She knew my technical capabilities, understood my professional reputation, and recognized that the difficult aspects of my personality came packaged with a track record of projects that passed inspection. We met for lunch at a restaurant in Lodo, far enough from the Meridian job site that I wouldn't accidentally run into anyone from Ridgeline. She listened carefully while I explained the deteriorating situation. When I finished, she nodded slowly. We've actually been in preliminary discussions with the Meridian owner's insurance carrier about this project. Their risk management people are nervous. The hospital system is self-insured up to a significant threshold, which means they're personally exposed if something goes wrong. Their underwriters have been asking pointed questions about commissioning quality. We talked for another hour. By the end, I had a verbal commitment for a position as senior commissioning manager with Cornerstone, starting 6 weeks out to allow for proper transition. 15% salary increase, signing bonus that would cover transition costs, and explicit authority over my own testing protocols without interference from project executives who didn't understand what they were approving. I negotiated one additional term that mattered more to me than the money. No after-hours emergency calls for the first 90 days. I was done being the guy who got called at 2 in the morning to fix problems that other people had created through negligence. Done being the safety net. Done cleaning up disasters for people who'd never give me credit or protection in return. Sandra pushed back on that term initially. We sometimes need rapid response on critical projects. Then hire someone else for that first 90 days, I said. I've spent 25 years responding to emergencies that shouldn't have been emergencies. I need a clean break, she agreed. 3 days later, I had the written offer signed and locked in. The contract was solid. My attorney reviewed it. I had an exit strategy that didn't involve unemployment or desperation. The morning after I signed the Cornerstone offer, April 9th, Stan called me into his office. His assistant said immediately. Scooter was already seated when I arrived, along with Ridgeline's project attorney, a detail that told me everything about what was coming. Stan slid a multi-page document across his desk. We need you to sign the Life Safety System Readiness Certification Letter. The owner requires this documentation before we can apply for temporary certificate of occupancy. I read it carefully. A formal certification stating all life safety systems in the Meridian Medical Tower had been tested and commissioned per code and were ready for occupancy. My name typed on the signature line with space for my professional credentials. The fire pump acceptance test hasn't been witnessed by the AHJ, I said. Smoke control hasn't completed balancing procedures. Fire alarm verification is about 60% complete. The sprinkler system has documented deficiencies that haven't been corrected. Scooter jumped in. We can complete those items in parallel with the TCO review process. The systems are substantially ready for occupancy. Substantially ready isn't ready. I'm not signing a certification for systems that haven't been tested. Stan's voice hardened. This is fundamentally a business decision. Every day of delay past schedule costs significant liquidated damages, substantial money. Then find someone else to sign the letter. Because I won't. Stan leaned forward, trying to sound reasonable. Everyone signs these before the last punch list. It's standard practice. The completion happens in parallel. Then everyone's reckless. The attorney cleared his throat. For the record, Gabriel, you're declining to execute a document within the scope of your employment duties? I'm declining to commit fraud. Call it whatever you want. The silence stretched. Stan exchanged a look with the attorney. The fire marshal knows your name, Stan said finally. They know you've been commissioning lead for 18 months. If someone else signs, they'll ask questions. Good. They should ask questions, because this project isn't ready for occupancy. I stood up and pulled the envelope from my jacket, placed it on Stan's desk, directly on top of the unsigned certification. This is my resignation from Ridgeline Building Group, effective 2 weeks. I've accepted a position with another firm. I'll complete my documentation and transition files, but I won't sign letters certifying untested systems. Stan's face cycled through surprise, anger, then something like panic as he realized his backup plan had just walked out. My final 2 weeks at Ridgeline were an exercise in watching desperate people scramble for solutions to problems of their own creation. Stan brought in an outside consulting engineer from a firm I'd never heard of to review the life safety documentation and provide the certification the owner was demanding. The consultant spent 3 days on site, barely examined the actual installed systems, and signed the readiness letter with Scooter listed as the project commissioning coordinator who had overseen the testing program. I kept my head down during those weeks, finished my documentation, organized project files for transition, answered direct questions but didn't volunteer solutions to problems that weren't my responsibility anymore. I stopped working late to troubleshoot issues that should have been caught during proper commissioning. I stopped being the safety net. Pete called me midway through that first week. He was so mad. Scooter just CC'd the whole project team on an email, blaming my crews for the fire-stopping deficiencies too. Not just the sprinkler heads now. He's saying we installed wrong fire caulk, wrong intumescent materials, the whole thing. Did you install wrong materials? You know we didn't. We installed exactly what the submittals specified. Then the documentation will prove it. The documentation is being altered, Gabriel. One of my guys pulled up an inspection form he signed last month. His signature's still there, but the material spec references have been changed. Dates moved around. Someone went into the files and modified them. I felt cold settle in my chest. That's fraud. Yeah. And my family's been calling me nonstop. The union steward's already asking questions about whether guys should be cooperating with the investigation. Hold on to your original copies of everything. Don't sign anything new, and don't talk to Ridgeline's lawyers without your own representation present. That's it? That's your advice? For now, that's all I can give you from inside. But this isn't over. Haley called me the night before my last day. Her voice was different than our previous conversations. Less angry, more scared. Dad, she said. There's rumors at the hospital that the opening might get pushed back significantly. Serious construction issue. What's really happening? There are systems that need substantially more testing before the building's safe for patients. The contractor's been under pressure, and shortcuts were taken that are going to have consequences. Shortcuts you tried to stop? Yeah. She was quiet. I could hear her working through the implications. I love you, I said. I wouldn't do anything that put you or your patients at risk, but I can't sign my name to documents that aren't true. I know, Dad. I know. About 3 weeks after my last day at Ridgeline, I was sitting in my truck outside a coffee shop, reviewing project files for my first cornerstone assignment, when my phone started blowing up. Pete first. His voice was tight, breathless, with chaos clearly audible in the background. Gabriel. The fire pump test. It's happening right now and it's going completely sideways. What do you mean sideways? The pump failed. Like, failed. Pressure came in way under threshold. Controllers throwing fault codes nobody can clear. The fire department rep is in there right now, and he is absolutely losing his mind. I could hear voices overlapping behind him. Someone shouting about documentation. a door slamming somewhere. The official AHJ witnessed acceptance test, the one that had been rescheduled twice while I was still there because the systems weren't ready, was finally happening, and it was falling apart in real time. My phone buzzed with a text from Hank Webb. Fire pump acceptance test failed. 14 psi under minimum threshold. Scooter showing the AHJ the readiness cert right now. This is about to get very ugly fast. I sat there in my truck watching the messages stack up. Another text from Hank. AHJ rep just stepped outside to make a phone call. Face like thunder. Calling his supervisor. Scooter followed him out trying to explain, but the guy won't even look at him. Then, 3 more fire department vehicles just pulled into the lot. Fire marshal's personal vehicle. This is now officially a situation. My phone rang again. Rudy Espinoza this time. His voice was shaking in a way I'd never heard from him in 15 years of working together. Gabriel, I'm standing in the pump room right now. They made me witness this test even though I told them directly, face to face, on the record, that the controller wasn't properly commissioned, that we hadn't completed the full startup sequence. They didn't care. They needed a witness signature, so they put me in the room. What happened during the test? The discharge pressure hit 111 pounds per square inch, 14 points under the 125 pounds per square inch threshold on the stamped hydraulic calculations for this project. The transfer switch threw 3 fault codes I've never seen before, codes that shouldn't even be possible if the controller was programmed correctly. The jockey pump kicked on and off 6 times in 2 minutes, which means there's a pressure leak somewhere in the system that nobody ever found. And when the fire department guy asked for the commissioning documentation showing the pump had already passed preliminary testing, Scooter handed him the letter, I said, already knowing. Yeah, the certification letter the consultant signed. The one claiming all life safety systems passed acceptance testing and are ready for occupancy. The AHJ rep read it, looked at the pump sitting there throwing alarms with pressure 14 points low, looked at Scooter standing there trying to explain, and his whole expression just changed. What did the AHJ rep say? He didn't say anything at first. That was the worst part. He just looked at the pump, looked at the pressure gauge reading 111 when it should have read 125 per the project calcs. Looked at the certification letter in his hand. Then he looked at Scooter. Then what? He folded the letter very carefully and put it in his clipboard. Then he turned to Scooter and asked one question, real flat. Who wrote this? Scooter started stammering about the consulting engineer, about the process. The AHJ rep didn't wait for him to finish. He walked out of the pump room without saying another word, just turned and walked out like Scooter wasn't even there. I followed him to the lobby. He's on the phone with his supervisor right now. I can hear him through the door saying phrases like falsified documentation and potentially fraudulent certification, and we need to escalate this to the state fire marshal's office. Another text from Pete. They're shutting us down. All life safety work stopped immediately pending formal investigation. Scooter's trying to blame instrumentation error, but the fire marshal himself just arrived, and he's not buying any of it. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my seat. The test failure itself wasn't surprising. I'd known those systems weren't ready. What I hadn't fully anticipated was how fast everything would cascade once the AHJ saw that certification letter next to a pump throwing alarms. By 5 o'clock that evening, it was official. The AHJ failed the acceptance test, froze all further inspections and approvals, and put occupancy on hold pending investigation into the discrepancy between certified documentation and actual system performance. TCO application denied. The owner's insurance carrier dispatched their own independent engineering team to conduct a comprehensive assessment of every life safety system in the facility. The smoke control test happened the following week after the hold was partially lifted to allow diagnostic evaluation. The results were significantly worse than the fire pump failure. Stair pressurization systems are designed to maintain a minimum pressure differential of 0.05 inches of water column between the stairwell and the adjacent corridor, preventing smoke from entering the stairs during a fire event so occupants can evacuate safely. That's basic life safety code. 3 of the 4 stairwells in the Meridian Tower tested below 0.03 inches of water column, which is a failure. 2 of them actually showed negative pressure differentials during certain test conditions, meaning they would actively draw smoke into the stairwells rather than keeping it out. The systems designed to save lives during evacuation would instead create death traps. The fire marshal's comprehensive walk-down inspection found 17 fire-stopping penetrations through rated assemblies that didn't match the approved documentation and couldn't be verified as code compliant. Rated fire doors with incorrect hardware that wouldn't latch properly during a fire event. Missing duct smoke detectors and return air plenums serving patient care areas. Fire and smoke dampers that had been physically installed in the ductwork but never wired to the fire alarm system. Scooter tried to explain each deficiency as isolated. Subcontractor installation error. Documentation problem that could be resolved with additional paperwork. The fire marshal listened with the patient expression of someone who'd heard these excuses many times before. He took detailed notes on everything Scooter said. Then he asked to see the commissioning logs showing exactly who had verified each component and when. The logs showed Scooter's initials on verification steps that never actually happened. The consultant's certification based on a 3-day site visit that couldn't possibly have covered the scope described. The fire marshal didn't issue citations that day. He did something worse. He formally requested a joint meeting with the building owner, GC executive leadership, the project bonding company, and the owner's insurance carrier. I heard afterward that Stan tried to blame the failures on my departure, said I'd left critical work incomplete, suggested I might have deliberately sabotaged documentation on my way out. The fire marshal asked one straightforward question. Who signed the life safety readiness certification letter? The answer wasn't my name. The 6 weeks following the failed acceptance tests were absolute chaos at Ridgeline. The building owner froze all remaining contract payments pending resolution of the life safety deficiencies and a satisfactory explanation of how falsified certification documents had been submitted to regulatory authorities. The bonding company that had guaranteed the project opened a formal investigation into whether the work had been properly managed and whether their exposure was going to result in significant claims. The insurance carrier required independent third-party verification of all completed work before they would even consider reinstating coverage for the facility. Pete called me in the middle of that chaos, his voice exhausted in a way I'd never heard from him. They're blaming my crews for everything now, he said. Scooter submitted formal documentation to the bonding company investigator claiming we installed wrong materials, deviated from approved submittals, failed to follow specifications. He went back and altered inspection sign-off forms after the fact, changed dates, changed specification references, made it look like we deviated from approved materials when we installed exactly what the submittals told us to install. That's document fraud. That's criminal. I know it's fraud, but the company lawyers are involved now, and they're circling the wagons to protect leadership. My union steward's telling guys not to talk to anyone without legal representation present. My cousin won't even look at me on site anymore because his foreman told him to stay away from anyone connected to Consolidated until this shakes out. The fire marshal's investigation is going to subpoena the original documentation from the project servers. The bonding company's auditors are going to pull email records and submittal logs and change tracking data. If Scooter altered documents after they were originally created, the electronic timestamps and metadata will show exactly when those changes were made and by whose login credentials. And if the investigation doesn't dig deep enough to find that evidence, this much money is at stake, they'll dig. Bonding company has millions in exposure. Insurance carrier has even more. They'll hire forensic accountants and document examiners who do this professionally. If the fraud is there, they'll find it. Pete was silent for a long moment. Then, are you going to help us? Actively help us, I mean? I'm going to tell the complete truth when I'm asked, and I'm going to make sure I get asked. That's the help I can provide. Haley called 2 days later. The hospital had officially announced a minimum 3-month delay, possibility of more depending on remediation progress. Her position was being held, but the clawback was enforced. She owed $8,000 she'd already spent on apartment and living expenses, money she didn't have available to repay. Dad, I'm sorry. She'd been crying. I was so angry at you. I blamed you for creating problems, for being difficult, and you were right about everything. I didn't want to be right. I wanted the building safe and your job to start on time. Those should have been compatible. What happens now? The building gets fixed. Systems get properly tested by people who know what they're doing. It opens eventually, and it'll actually be safe. But it takes longer and costs more than if they'd done it right initially. Her voice hardened. The nurses are all talking. Someone falsified safety certifications. The hospital could have opened with systems that didn't work. People could have died. Patients who couldn't evacuate. Staff trying to help them. Me. My friends from nursing school. I know. Ridgeline's HR contacted me 3 times during this period. First to remind me of the standard confidentiality provisions in my original employment agreement and suggest any public statements could be considered violations subject to legal action. Second, to offer a settlement package in exchange for a comprehensive release preventing cooperation with any investigation or legal proceeding. I declined. The third call came from their head of employee relations. Voice smooth and practiced. We'd hate for you to complicate things, Gabriel. For everyone's sake, then tell your people to stop forging. Long pause. The call ended. I saved that voicemail. My attorney said it might prove useful as evidence of attempted witness intimidation. Stan and Scooter turned on each other 5 weeks into the investigation. The bonding company's forensic auditors recovered email records showing Stan had directly instructed Scooter to expedite certification by whatever means necessary to meet timeline. Scooter had responded by documenting his concerns in an email he'd written but never sent, saving it in his drafts folder as insurance. But Ridgeline's exchange server retention policy meant even unsent drafts got backed up to the corporate archive, and the e-discovery process pulled it. When confronted with Scooter's unsent email, Stan claimed he never gave those instructions and Scooter had acted independently. When shown the discrepancy, Scooter claimed his father had pressured him into actions he knew were wrong. The bonding company's final report recommended immediate termination of both Stan and Scooter, referral of the consulting engineer to the state licensing board, and notification of relevant authorities regarding potential criminal charges. I started at Cornerstone Building Sciences on a Monday morning in late October, after the leaves had started changing color in the mountains west of Denver. My first 2 weeks were orientation, getting up to speed on their processes and systems, meeting the team. Then came my first major assignment. Cornerstone had been retained by the Meridian owner's insurance carrier for independent commissioning oversight of all remediation work on the life safety systems. My specific role: verify that every deficiency identified in the investigation was properly corrected, every system met code requirements, every document accurately reflected actual installed conditions. The same building where I'd been stripped of authority, pushed toward the exit, and set up to take the fall, was now a building where I held absolute veto power over the path to completion. Stan was terminated by Ridgeline's board of directors 3 weeks before I started the oversight engagement. The official explanation cited project management deficiencies, resulting in significant financial exposure and reputational damage to the company. The unofficial explanation was that the bonding company had made his removal a non-negotiable condition of continuing their guarantee on the project. Scooter resigned 2 days after his father's termination. His LinkedIn profile now says independent construction management consultant, but word travels fast in the Denver construction community. As far as I've been able to determine, he hasn't secured any consulting clients. The consulting engineer who signed the fraudulent certification had his professional license suspended by the state board pending formal hearing. Criminal referral was under consideration by the district attorney's office. Pete's crews were formally cleared of any wrongdoing in the final investigation report. The forensic document analysis proved exactly what he'd told me. They installed exactly what was specified, and problems originated from management decisions and documentation fraud at levels far above the field. His company received a substantial change order for corrections that weren't their fault, and their reputation in the local market improved once the truth came out. But it wasn't free. Pete told me later his guys lost close to 400 hours of work during the stop work period. Consolidated ate about $12,000 in legal fees fighting the false accusation. A few of his younger guys quit during the uncertainty, spooked by the rumors. The vindication was real, but so was the damage. The remediation took 4 months of intensive work. I witnessed every acceptance test personally, reviewed every piece of documentation for accuracy and completeness, walked every floor with the fire marshal, and answered every technical question he had about the systems and their verification procedures. The fire pump passed on the first attempt after the motor was replaced and controller properly programmed by someone who actually understood the system. Smoke control achieved full compliance after significant rebalancing. All fire stopping was removed and reinstalled with proper documentation. Fire alarm verified device by device, circuit by circuit. The tower received its certificate of occupancy in February, 7 months behind Stan's promised schedule. Haley started her surgical ICU position the following week. The hospital worked out a payment plan for her clawback. Cornerstone paid me a project completion bonus that I quietly used to pay off her remaining balance. She called me the night before her first shift. "Dad, I walked through the building during orientation. Everything's where it should be. That's how it's supposed to work. I just wanted to thank you for walking away instead of going along." The next morning, I drove to the Meridian Tower for a final walkthrough with the fire marshal. We took the stairs together, all 14 floors, checking every landing, every pressurization sensor, every door closer. At the top, he signed the final approval, handed me the official copy. "Clean job, Nolan. Should have been you from day one." I walked back down alone. In the lobby, I passed a group of nurses in scrubs heading toward the elevators. One of them was Haley. She didn't see me, but I saw her, laughing with her colleagues, starting her first real day. I walked out to my truck and pulled out my phone. Texted Pete, "You're cleared. Final report confirmed. Your guys are good." His reply came 30 seconds later. "About damn time. Stakes on me." I started the engine and pulled out of the lot. The Meridian Medical Tower filled my rearview mirror, 14 stories of glass and steel, ready to receive its first patients. I never looked back. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.